Welcome back to Rusted Junk, the 80s Movies podcast. Do you find yourself wanting to put on a corked hat, fight crocodiles in the outback and then move to New York? How about befriending an alien by dressing him up as a ghost on Halloween? If so, this is the podcast for you. If you remember searching for that perfect film from Blockbuster, and if you grew up in the UK, waiting for that one VHS copy to be returned to the newsagents, then welcome. We'll have fond memories waiting for you. I'm Charlie, and the rest of the Rusted Junk team are Amanda.
Hello.
Joe.
How do you all?
And Dom.
Hello! The film we'll be covering this time is the 1982 Martin Scorsese directed King of Comedy, starring Robert De Niro, Jerry Lewis and Sandra Bernhard, and many others. But as this is Lucky Dip, and it's Joe's turn to go to choose, as we pulled out the hat, and we're going to pull the film out of the hat at the end of this one. Who knows it's going to be, but it's Lucky Dip. Joe, do you want to introduce the film? Why did you choose it?
Because I love this film. It's one of my favorite films. I mean, I wouldn't say, I don't know if it would make my top 10 or anything like that, but it's Martin Scorsese. It's Robert De Niro. I love, what's her name? I can't think of her name now.
Sandra Bernhard.
Sandra Bernhard, yeah. I love her. Not that I remember her, but I love her.
Right.
There've been many women in my life like that, Joe. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah. But it's I just think it's a work of genius. Like every time I see it, it just gets better and better. And it's really not meant to be a comedy, but the more I watch it, the more funnier I think it is. And it reminds me of a Kubrick film. And I did research because I'm wondering if he saw it and what his thoughts were on it. And unfortunately, I couldn't find anything. I mean, I have to think that he had seen a Scorsese film, but it just so reminds me, like, if I would have thought Kubrick directed this film. Again, I think it's great. I think De Niro is good. I think the big problem with this film, though, is that it came right after Taxi Driver, and there are similar characters in a way, and Rupert Pupkin, and damn it, I should have wrote some more notes. What's his name?
Here it is.
No. Who's Robert De Niro's character in Taxi Driver?
Oh, Travis Bickle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're a little similar, except for Rupert's a little happier, But I don't know.
Wait a minute, they're similar.
Yeah,
they are similar.
What?
They
live in exactly. They live in a fantasy world. Their world is not based in reality. They enjoy the fantasy world more.
Right.
Anyway,
gonna get to that.
So am I supposed to give my rating? Are we going to go over that?
No. This is the brand new direction that we're going to take. We'll have a rating at the end because I think people's ratings may change.
Oh, will change. Okay.
May change. Shall I go next? Yeah, in fact, yeah. Go on. I'll go next then. I rarely, it's not the film that we've chosen or collectively we've done it. It's great. I didn't like it. I wasn't a fan. I don't see it. I think this feels to me like The Emperor's New Clothes, and I'm just not seeing it because everybody else goes, oh, it's Scorsese, it's De Niro, it's match made in heaven, it's got to be actually. The character of Rupert, and I genuinely thought it was Rupert Pumpkin until I saw the trailer, which we haven't introduced yet, but that's fine. We can do the trailer. We can probably match that back in at some point. But
do it at the start before we introduce the film. It's fine.
Yeah. I'll find a way to do it. So hopefully you would have already heard it. So great. It wasn't a great trailer, so I think we all agree on that. No, it checks many boxes, but I'm really surprised to hear you, Joe, say this could be Kubrick. Really?
Yes.
We've got Taxi Driver, we've got Raging Bull, and then we've got The King of Comedy. It's a film Scorsese didn't want to do. We'll get to that in trivia. It was just it flopped so badly at the box office.
But it's highly regarded now.
Well, and but it's no Rocky Horror. I mean, it's not something that flopped at the time and there's now ground a sort of cult following.
Well, yeah, it doesn't have the cult following of Rocky Horror, but I think, again, you need to watch it over and over and over again, Charlie.
Just tie him to a chair.
But I might just get
Stick it on repeat.
get a belt and just hit myself while I'm doing it. That's fine. Because
It'll end up like a Clockwork Orange in that case, only, which will
Yeah.
be Stanley Kubrick film.
yeah, so
Just get the eye lifts and just tie him to a chair, Amanda. Put
Can
some
I
drops in
ju-
his
can I
eyes.
just can I
Keep
just
his eyes
acknowledge?
open.
Can I just acknowledge that excellent observation there by Amanda? That Kubrick link, Scorsese link, that was on point. And
But
as was my
sounds
daughter's
like a note
delivery of
about
a gin and
some
tonic.
films.
yeah, well, yeah. She's,
No,
I mean,
I think Charlie, you're getting too far into your review here. Let's save that for the end,
Right.
because what I would say at this stage, Joe, is that I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on this film, because I think 3/4 of this pod being on the other side of the Atlantic, there are some things that I just didn't get about it, but that I'm keen to understand your perspective on as an American.
yes, definitely.
One of them
yeah.
is one of them is Jerry Lewis as an actor, and I don't want to preempt roll call too much, but I didn't really know him that much, to be
That's
honest.
funny.
And his Wikipedia pages are vast. His
It's huge.
He's got 52 separate bullet point honors on his Wikipedia page, and I think if I'd had a gun at my head, I wouldn't have known much about him before researching for this pod. And I also think that whole kind of genre of talk shows, generally talk show hosts, and the celebrity status they have in America, you know, in the 70s, 80s, and more recently, just doesn't translate over to this side of the Atlantic. So,
Mhm.
you know,
What?
well, you can't tell me Terry Wogan and Graham Norton have, you know, the same iconic status as this film or
I can tell you that.
Letterman's.
What? Like Michael Aspel and
Oh,
you know,
come
people like
on!
that? I mean,
you're clutching up more straws than a masturbating scarecrow there, Charlie. You know, they're, yeah,
I love that.
I know he's got to get that in, isn't he?
they have a profile. Oh, don't worry, I've got a Simpsons reference as well for later on. But you know, they have a profile. They are famous. They are celebrities to an extent. But these people, as this film demonstrated, you know, have a celebrity status well above and beyond their British equivalents. I think, and you know, therefore, I think the film has more meaning, perhaps, in America than it would do here. Which isn't to be negative about it, but I think this is one of those rare examples where there is a bit of a cultural barrier between the US and UK. So yeah, definitely keen to hear what Joe has to say. And of course, I'll stop rambling now, Amanda, as well, as we're in this introductory bit.
Wow. Okay. So at the end of the last podcast episode, obviously Joe was picked for this film and out of the hat. I'd never actually seen this film before, ever, at all. And the only reference I had to it was from the Joker film that came out, like the most recent Joker film. So I was actually intrigued by this. I was really looking forward to watching the film, so I could kind of see what it was all about. And I love Robert De Niro anyway. I think he's an absolute amazing actor. And so yeah, I watched it actually yesterday, so it's still quite fresh in my mind. Yeah, interesting movie. And it wasn't until after I kind of watched the movie that I saw, you know, it didn't do particularly well at the box office. And I think it was a film that was ahead of its time. I think it's actually more relevant today than it was then.
Yeah.
And I think people didn't really identify with it at the time. It was far too clever a movie, I think. Not to put people down in the 80s for their intelligence, but I just think people wouldn't necessarily have got it in the context it was supposed to be. Because this is quite a dark film. It's quite disturbing, I think. I don't think it's a comedy. And that's so I'm interested to know, really, from your point of view, Joe, why you think, because you've watched it quite a few times, why you think the more times you watch it, it turns into more of a comedy for you. Because for me, I would probably say it'd be complete reverse. For me, if I kept watching it, I'd see even more dark themes to it. So
well, it's funny that you say that,
quite
like,
interesting.
that it's a comedy and it's dark, because it's considered a dark comedy. That's like a genre.
Yeah.
You know.
But I don't get the comedy element of it. None of the film actually was a comedy to me. It didn't really come across as that at all.
I guess
and
it's,
even when he went into his monologue, I went, go too far. The content of what he was talking about in a comedic way actually was still really, really dark. So I didn't get the comedy element, but I actually really enjoyed watching the film. I won't give too much away.
I guess the comedy element for me is that I know so many people like that. And I've worked with so many people like that too. Like,
oh, really? You work with a lot of Ruperts?
A ton of them. I mean, I used to have one on Nerd
They all
Alert,
live
the
in
other
their
podcast.
fantasy worlds. Really?
Well, that they think that they're better than they are. You know, that they think that they're actually funny, because there's only some people that can be funny. I mean, I've tried to be funny. Like, if I rehearse it, I'm not funny. I'm accidental funny, basically. If I say something and it's stupid, everybody laughs, and they're like, "Did you think that up?" It's like, no, you know, it's just I said something stupid. But I know like basically where I need to stand. I cannot be a comedian, and it's hard to be a comedian. And it just shows he's not a comedian, but in his mind, he is the funniest guy on the planet Earth. And he's trying to convince everybody that he is. And he just thinks everybody's crazy that they haven't, grabbed him up already. And this guy that I used to work with on my podcast, like, he would always tell a joke and you would always know it was coming. And we'd all roll our eyes because he'd go, it'd start off like that. And he would say a joke and no one would laugh. No one would smile. And he'd be laughing, like where he'd be like, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking about the joke I said, and what I would do to goof with him, because I know he wouldn't listen to the podcast, is I would add crickets after he would tell his joke, or I'd add a sad trombone, like, wah, wah, because the audience, when they listen to it, they know it's not funny. He's the only one that doesn't know that he's not funny. And what's funny too is that I still kind of see him on Facebook. I know he's not listening to this podcast because he'd probably kill me, but I see him on Facebook, and he's come up with a brand new podcast that he's doing by himself on YouTube, and it's about films that he's never seen before. And he's just basically going to have a camera with him on it. I'm not going to say his name because I'm afraid it's going to get back to him. And he's just going to bore the hell out of everybody for an hour. And I guarantee you he's going to get, at the most, maybe 5 views. If he might get a lot, because he'll be watching it over and over again just to see how great he is.
Can you send me the link, Joe?
Yeah, I will.
Yeah, I want to see this guy.
I had sent it to someone else that happened to be on the podcast, and they laughed because he even has a logo. And I was like, oh my God, this guy, and he's no John Travolta, like, he's not the best looking guy in the room, but this guy must have the weirdest mirrors in his house because he thinks he is gorgeous. He always wants to be on the screen. So he's like Rupert Pupkin. And I work with, again, so many people, like when I was an accountant, when I did stocks, like where people are so annoying and they don't get a hint. And it just makes me laugh, like when I see him, because he makes everybody uncomfortable, Rupert Pupkin, except for himself. Like, he thinks that it's perfectly fine when someone says to go away. And I was like, no, that's okay. I'll stay. I'll stay. I'm fine.
Yeah.
It's just...
I can't wait to see it, Joe.
Are you going to do
a
synopsis of the film? Because we haven't.
Yeah, in a moment. Yeah.
All right.
I just want to see I haven't watched Jaws 3, and I can imagine his comedy's like, and there's this big shark, and there's this really small gate, and the big shark gets through the gate. What's up with that? And probably puts in laughter or something like that. Like, you'd have to put crickets in there if you were editing.
No, he'd probably say something like, "It's too bad they didn't have dental floss in that movie."
Oh, good Lord. That's worse. I think I prefer mine.
All I can say is I hope Joe never does my performance review. That was quite a brutal takedown. We just all listened to.
He deserves it. He deserves it.
Don't mention it. Don't think I've got away with it. Don't mention the war.
Right. Wow.
I'll talk off podcast about it. But,
all right. Okay. Well, for those that don't know what the King of Comedy is about, and you've just heard us for 10 minutes basically breaking down whether we like it or not, the storyline is that Rupert Pupkin, not Pumpkin, is obsessed with becoming a comedy great. However, when he confronts his idol, talk show host Jerry Langford, with a plea to perform on Jerry's show, he's only given the runaround. He doesn't give up, however, but persists in stalking Jerry until he gets what he wants. Eventually, he must team up with his psychotic Langford-assessed friend Marcia to kidnap the talk show host in hopes of finally getting to perform his stand-up routine. So yes, that is the summary. That is pretty much it in a nutshell. Should we go to roll call? Because I'm looking forward to this for two reasons. One, I'm not doing it. I'm not hosting it. And B, because like Dom,
One and B.
tell me all about.
I noticed that as well. Yeah, you can't go 1 and B. What the hell's that?
I could do what I like. Oh no, I can't on this podcast.
You're a bit discombobulated tonight, aren't you?
A little bit, yeah.
It's all over the place. What is going on?
I blame the heat. Anyway, so B, I'm going B. I'm looking forward to hearing all about Jerry Lewis because, like Dom, I had no idea. I know he did like a funny face or something like that. That's what I remember. So here we're going to find out all about it. Here's roll call.
Roll call.
Roll call.
Probably just
With
interrupted
Joey.
that. Joey. That has British connotations, doesn't it, Joe?
Oh God, yeah, Joey.
Yeah.
All right, so the first one's Robert De Niro. So can we go to Amanda? Because I know she loves to basically
Oh, she
go over the movies that actors have been in before. Can you name a few?
gushes.
Oh, you rotten
Yeah.
thing. All right, okay. So, he's been in loads, hasn't he?
Yikes.
Yeah, I know, this isn't
Raging
looking
Bull.
good.
Raging
Yes.
Bull, because that's another
Yeah.
Scorsese movie, isn't it? Ooh, check me out.
Yeah, we've already mentioned it, so you can't have it. But yeah, go on.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Okay. No, I
Okay.
can have that. Thanks, because I wasn't
Yeah,
paying
you
attention.
can. I'm doing roll call, so I'm saying yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
right, okay,
thanks.
blimey.
You're
easily pleased.
Okay. There was Casino.
Yes.
Mm.
There was is it The Irishman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
that was a
quite
recent one.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Is that another Scorsese one as well? It
Yes.
is,
Yes.
I think, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, look at
Yeah.
me. What else?
Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Yeah.
Well, there's Taxi Driver.
Yep.
Yeah. You missed that. A fairly big one, I would say.
Yeah, it's the Goodfellas, is it?
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
There we go.
And hasn't he been in?
Started doing comedy.
No, he's been in some other stuff as well. I can't remember. Anyway, I'm
Cape
sure it's
Fear.
gangster stuff.
Cape Fear.
Amanda,
Brilliant.
Untouchables.
when I did my De Niro research, I edited out the films which were okay or pretty good and just kept the Stone Cold classics, yeah? And I think there are 22 Stone Cold classics, you know.
Wow.
which
Oh,
are
wait a minute. Are some of them in the 80s? Because we might, I don't know if it might overlap, but okay, go on.
Well, I think the majority of them are in the 80s and 90s, definitely.
Okay.
In fact, there's only... Yeah. So should we just go through them in order?
Are we going to
Yeah.
do some like instant reactions like we do when Amanda does her Billy Joel impressions when she did
Well,
on previous
There are
bit?
some... So there can be no reaction. They're uncontroversial bangers, yeah?
Okay, well, we'll put it to the test.
Well, Godfather Part 2.
Right, okay.
That was the
Yeah,
one.
yeah, of
Godfather.
course.
Yeah. That's it. He's very handsome in that.
Taxi Driver, Deer
Yes.
Hunter, Raging
Oh, yeah.
Bull,
Yeah.
Once
Yeah.
Upon a Time in America,
Yes.
Untouchables, Midnight Run, Goodfellas, Cape Fear, Casino, Heat. Yeah, yeah. What a collection!
Yeah, I
that is.
can't argue with that.
Then if we consider most of those to be 10 out of 10s, there's a slight dip, but only a slight dip. Jackie Brown, Ronin, Backdraft.
Yeah, he went through this like late in the late 90s, making some absolute. I mean, Ronin wasn't rubbish, but it wasn't anywhere near his usual standard.
Now the next two are personal favourites of mine. I'm not saying they're as good as Taxi Driver or Deer Hunter, but I think Meet the Parents and Analyze This are both very
Oh,
solid films.
God.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
No, they're fun movies for sure.
Meet
Well,
the Parents,
fun movies, but actually a notch above your average,
Yeah,
kind of.
I'd agree.
Yeah, can't disagree with that.
And then there has been some dross more recently. I'll acknowledge that, but more later day De Niro, Silver Linings Playbook, and The
Oh, that's
Irishman.
incredible.
Yeah.
He
I wasn't
is.
a fan of
Oh,
that. though.
he's so good in that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, so I think if you take, and that's my 21, 22 films, which I think stand the test of time according to anyone's filmography. But if you strip some of those out and you just have the absolute stone cold classics, I think you've got Godfather, Taxi Driver, Deer Hunter, Raging Bull, Once Upon a Time in America, Untouchables, Midnight Run, Goodfellas, Cape Fear, Casino, and Heat. Yeah, I just think bang.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
What other actor has a range of hits like that? I don't think there's anybody
Pacino.
who can touch that. Yeah. Pacino would be a suggestion. Jack Nicholson would be
Pacino
another.
plays Pacino, though, doesn't he?
So does De Niro.
No, he doesn't.
Yeah, he does though.
He doesn't.
I'm not even necessarily talking about the performance, although I am to some extent, but actually just those films, to have starred in those absolute classic films, which are an ensemble effort. The director, often Scorsese, deserves tons of credit. I don't think there is another actor who has got that track record of films.
There's Brando. He's pretty good.
I think the counter arguments, Brando, Chino, and Nicholson would be the ones perhaps. Yeah. But actually, for me, it's De Niro. And watching this film, Joe, the compliment I would pay you, Joe, is that actually it made me challenge myself a little bit, because if you were asking me who my all top 10 films of all time were, I'd have woven in films like Aliens, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, Groundhog Day. These things that mean a lot to me. But actually, just from that list, you know, do they really hold a candle to Raging Bull, Taxi Driver? These are such evocative, important films, I think, and De Niro carries them. He's such a charismatic screen presence that for me it just blew me away. And again, what I would say is that there are two things that I think are brilliant about this film. One is New York in the early 1980s, so evocative you can almost smell the hot dogs and the cigarette smoke, and the other one is De Niro's performance, which just carries the film for me completely.
Well,
so
I used to have lunch over there where most of that was filmed. I didn't see them filming it, but I used to go there a lot, so there's a fondness for me for that, definitely kind of a nostalgia.
First of all, Dom, that was an excellent,
yes,
excellently put is all I can say. It's just brilliant. I'd argue that
I need something to get the California raisins off my resume when it comes to our YouTube channel.
No, that's always going to be on there.
That's on forever, Dom. Sorry.
Okay.
I would argue
Robert De Niro and the California raisins. Then, yeah.
Pacino's in two of those films, so yeah, you can argue who carries who, who's the better in each one. But Pacino will always have Godfather, which is pretty much, I think, is better than the second one. But I might be on my own there. Yeah, I can't follow that. I just think it's when you talk about the reference to New York, I did like the grittiness of that, and I know we'll talk about Joker at some point. I know because Amanda, big fan, as am I. But Joe, I think was the only film that you rated as a 9 out of 10 on your own podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'd be interested. We'll be interested to get into that at some point, but. I suppose one of the things that's just reminded me that I really did like about this film is that the grittiness of New York. And so I'd ask you, Joe, what was it like growing up in which we were told is just a city of crime, and you'll get knifed, on every corner and stuff like that. What was it actually like?
I never got knifed. I never got mugged. And I went to some really bad areas, and I'd stayed at, I would have happy hour. Next thing you know, it'd be 3:00 in the morning, and I couldn't get my ferry home. I just happened to be lucky, I think. But yeah, I mean, I know there were a lot of people when I would go with them, they were afraid they were going to get mugged or eaten by a rat or something like that. And it's just like you get used to it every day, and you know how to behave too. It's like, remember the beginning of Batman, Tim Burton's Batman, where the kid pulls out a map and the father's like, don't act like a tourist. You don't want to act like a tourist when you're in New York. You just want to just act cool. You just want to go about your life and all that. But it does look like that. That's what I give Scorsese a lot of credit for. I hope I'm not since we're doing roll call, that I'm getting a little too far off from roll call, but it looked like New York to me. Not everything looks like New York to me. The people look like New York to me. The extras, everyone that he hired, they were from New York. And one thing I always point out, the King Kong movie that Peter Jackson made, one of the first scenes that they had was they were in New York. Nobody was from New York. I could tell right away that they were New Zealand. They didn't know how to act like New York. They didn't look like New Yorkers. And these people were, because I used to live amongst them and I used to interact with them. And this was what New York exactly was like. And it's nice to go to lunch around that time. It probably was like when he was trying to meet Jerry during the day. You see a lot of people sitting on that Paramount Studios. There's Rockefeller Center over there, the Radio City Music Hall. It's right around that area, and it's just nice. And that's what people would do, is they just buy their lunch and they just eat like he was doing. Like he picked up his briefcase and he was going to eat a sandwich. That's what we would do.
That's all he had in his briefcase, wasn't it?
This is fascinating because one of the things.
Did he have butter in his sandwiches?
No, no way.
Oh, let's not go there. Let's not go there. Thank you.
But Joe, sorry, Charlie, I know you're going to chip in, but I just think a film or a book or anything really, any cultural thing you digest that can evoke a sense of place. And Joe, you're fortunate enough to have lived there at the time. I haven't, but I've been to New York plenty of times, but not in the 80s. I just think that's two points in the score straight away for that. If you can kind of bring to life and really visually, but that evokes your wider senses into a place, like I think Scorsese does brilliantly throughout his entire career, but particularly in this film, I think for early 80s New York, then that's just wonderful. And for me, film, movies as a medium to transport you somewhere else, perhaps more so for us, Joe, than for you, that's really, really powerful, and that's brilliant directing.
Is it fair to say, Joe, because I think the conversation just sparked something within me, is it fair to say that on a par with Woody Allen in the way that he shoots New York?
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, no, definitely, because Scorsese has done several movies that are based in New York, like Goodfellas and all that. Like he's a New Yorker too, so he understands it. So, but no, that's a good point. Him and Woody Allen. The only thing that threw me off that I felt was weird, and it could be because of the character, because Rupert is just such a weird character, is that he basically was wearing clothes from the 70s. Like he was wearing a three-piece suit. They didn't really wear three-piece suits back then. He had the hairstyle, it looked 70s, and that could again be to the fact that he just lives in his own world, and that he didn't change with the changing times or something. But
didn't he look like Johnny Carson though?
Can I ask, in the film, what actual job did he have? Did he have a job, or was
he
it
did have a job?
His figment of imagination that he had a job.
Well, and he did go and drop something off at that one office.
What though?
I don't know. It might have been something. I don't know exactly what it was.
I don't know if he actually earned any money. So maybe if he hadn't earned money and he still lived with his mum, apparently.
Well, that's the whole thing, is that like Joker, you don't know what is true. He might not even have had a mother,
Exactly. It just because in his monologue, in his comedy, he talks about his mother's been dead for 9 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, in the basement, he's yelling at his mother because his mother's telling him his bus has arrived, and you're like, oh, that's a bit. Hang on.
Well, his mother does answer because she's played by Martin Scorsese's mother, which is more relevant when you think about the film Goodfellas, where she's actually features on screen, and she's it's a very diminutive Italian American woman with a mop of bright white hair, but she's off screen. And as I was making my notes as I was watching the movie, I wondered if it's the same person. I checked it, and it was. So yeah, it's not some sort of Anthony Perkins style desiccated skeleton upstairs. He does have a mother in the film.
Before this turns into, this will be the longest roll call ever.
Yeah.
De Niro deserves it. De Niro deserves it.
I know. Well, yeah, fine. Okay, let's go to Jerry Lewis.
It's film relevant.
I genuinely want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Jerry Lewis. So the thing with Jerry Lewis, Amanda, do you want to guess some of his movies?
No, I don't know any.
No, I'm kidding, because I didn't think anybody really knew.
I couldn't name you one.
Joe, but just take a step back, because like I said earlier, he's like a cultural icon in America and France, bizarrely, apparently as well, but particularly America. And I'm not sure any of us had heard of him before this. So put Jerry Lewis into context.
Is this Jerry Lee Lewis? Or is that
No,
something
it's
completely
Jerry
different?
Lewis.
Right. Okay. So,
So
there you go. I have no idea.
I mean, I find it amazing that you guys never heard of him. Because before him, there was Laurel and Hardy, like that comedy teams. Laurel and Hardy. Then after Laurel and Hardy, there was Abbott and Costello, and then there was Martin and Lewis. It was Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. Did you ever hear of Dean Martin?
Oh, of course, yeah. Old soak.
And they were really funny. They did. I mean, if you guys ever watched their early movies, they're hysterical. And Dean Martin was a straight man. Jerry Lewis was the funny guy, and he. But the problem, what happened, is that they butted heads a lot behind the scenes, and then finally, Dean Martin felt that he was in Jerry Lewis's shadow because he got all the laughs, he got most of the applause. So he decided, well, screw this. I never want to work with this guy. And he didn't talk to him for maybe 20, 30 years. I think he finally, before he died, they met again and, they kind of hugged it out on the Jerry Lewis telethon that Jerry Lewis would do every year for MS, multiple sclerosis. And every year we knew that we were going back to school because it was always done on Labor Day. And Jerry Lewis would host this telethon that was like 3 days, and he'd have all these stars, and you'd want to contribute money to the cause and all that. But anyway, getting back to him though, so he went off on his own, and he did probably his famous movie was The Nutty Professor. And
right, yeah. Okay.
And so Eddie Murphy remade that movie, and that was very popular at the time. But he did Cinderfella, and he basically plays the same character. He's like a nerdy character, and he can't get a girlfriend, and then at the end, he someone falls in love with him. But he is legitimately funny, but he is also a bit of a prick. From what I've heard, he's just a nasty person. You don't want to know him. You don't want to be friends with him because he thinks he is way above everybody. He's just like the character of Jerry Langford.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't like his character at all.
I mean, I've heard so many stories, and there's videos on YouTube of interviews where he's yelling at people, and calling them stupid. You don't know what you're doing. Like he just berates people. But when you look at his early stuff, when he's very young, like when he's 19, 20 years old, he's funny, and kids loved him. They thought he was hysterical. And I never understood the whole thing with France, but I did hear that a lot of that had to do with the fact that they dubbed his voice in France. So they were laughing at his performance, but they admired the voice that was coming out of him. And I think the guy that dubbed his voice died and someone else did it, and then they didn't find him as funny. So
I think, Joe, it did go above and beyond that. So he won the Légion d'honneur, which is France's highest award for non-military contribution to the country. So I think over there he was seen as an auteur. He was really highly regarded culturally in a way that just absolutely wasn't in the UK, for example.
Well, again, I wouldn't say he's in my top 50, 100 funniest people. He's not that funny. So I don't understand why the French had that much love for him, but they did. I know like they worshipped him, and people made fun of him here. It's well, why don't you move to France or something like that? Because like they, if you didn't like, a lot of people didn't like Jerry Lewis because again, he got arrogant, he got stuffy, and maybe that was part of it, is that he was worshipped in France, like Steven Seagal. I think is it Tibet, where they thought he was
Tibet.
a god,
Yeah.
and he thought, it's like, I'll just live here. It's because people think I'm a god. But anyway,
A bit like David Hasselhoff being like a really, really revered singer in Germany.
Norman Wisdom in Albania. Yeah, there's like a rich tapestry of these bizarre affections which people are held. But we are kind of slightly glossing over Lewis's darker side, Joe. So again, it blew my mind when I found out how famous he was, because I actually thought the way I prepare for the pod is I watch the film first, then I do the research after. So I try and watch the film on its own merits. But I think this might be an example where that backfired, because had I known about Lewis and his personality and his history, I think it might have brought a richness to his portrayal. Because there are some dark aspects to his on-screen persona, and I wondered to what extent he drew on that, to what extent he was aware of it. For example, I gather he had a Percodan addiction for quite a long time, which really screwed with him. Percodan, which is like an American prescription drug, I think. So that's my Simpsons reference. Krusty the Clown was also addicted to Percodan, which I think was and also had in Krusty the Clown's fictitious world, a highly corrupt telethon which he used to finance his extravagant lifestyle.
Maybe there's some parallels.
Yeah, well, it's a telethon.
Well, let's not get banned from YouTube, but potentially. And Jerry Lewis is again, I'm doing an Amanda here. Jerry Lewis's sons, not Jerry Lee Lewis's sons, had a particularly difficult time with their father, I think, as well. So yeah, it was a dark and problematic individual as well as being highly successful.
Yeah, and he also did this movie, I forget what it was called. They never released it, where he played a clown and he was in clown makeup. And what he would do is he would lead little children to the the extermination chambers during World War II, like little Jewish children. And they would follow him in there, and then because he was a clown, and then he would walk out and close the doors, and then they would just die of the gas. And it's never been released. There's been like pictures of it, and it could have ruined his career. I think they realized that was it, that would have destroyed his career. But people have been like dying to just find a full thing of that movie, because it sounds so bizarre and so dark, and they can't believe he actually did it. But it's like that's probably the darkest part of his life, is that people will mention from time to time, is that he did this movie, and it was so horrific that they had to, like, I don't know if they burned it or whatever. Anyway,
it's like
how do you say yes to a movie like that?
I think he even came up with the idea of it. So,
somebody came up with the sitcom Heil Honey I'm Home, where the couple live next door to Hitler. So these things happen.
Oh my God.
Well, he is Jewish, Jerry Lewis. So I think he would use that as his defense, but still, it's nothing that I think most people would want to see. Especially
that's a trivia bit. You just reminded me. In the bit where he's in the house, because I know get to it. The bit where he's in the house, and he comes in and he's not happy, and they have a row. Robert De Niro just pelted him with anti-Semitic insults, which is why he's so angry in that scene. And afterwards, he's going, "What was that all about? It's ridiculous." He went and complained, and when Robert De Niro went, "Well, are you not professional? You're not a method actor?" And he didn't understand what De Niro was trying to do, and De Niro went, "Well, this is what I do, so get on board." But anyway,
what about have we finished Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, we'll finish with Mr. Lewis.
Who's next?
Diana Abbott. She was basically the only thing I know about her. She was the first wife of Robert De Niro.
Actually?
Yeah.
Oh, were they married in this film or not?
Yes. Well, when they were filming it, yeah, they were married.
Oh.
She was in Taxi Driver apparently too. She was in a lot of his movies, and he'd always try to get her in there.
It's just hilarious for those of us on this side of the pond when we talk about Diane Abbott, and we're not talking about the Shadow Home Secretary who can't count the number of shoes she's wearing on a particular given day. But there is a different Diane Abbott with a different spelling of her first name. And
do you know who we're referring to, Joe, or not?
No, she's my Jerry Lewis.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. So the Shadow Home Secretary. So I don't know what the equivalent position is in American politics. Secretary of State, I suppose, would be the equivalent. Is a semi-literate. Well, I don't know. I don't want to alienate any of our left-leaning listeners on this.
Well, she likes to drink gin and tonic on the underground, despite the fact that that's banned. You're not allowed to do that, but she justifies it. So, I've had a hard day. And you're like, oh yeah, until the spotlight goes on their side, and then they go. But if Boris Johnson was drinking a pint on the underground, all hell would break loose. So,
As far as I know, that Diane Abbott was never married to Robert De Niro, but
No.
Oh, I think he'd run a mile.
but no, only second to my level of surprise at how famous Jerry Lewis was that this woman had been married to De Niro and had one children and adopted another child together. So this was an important part of his life for a long time.
Yeah.
How long were they married for?
12 years. Yeah.
Wow. I didn't think it was that long, but I guess so.
And then Naomi Campbell, I assume, after that.
What?
Yeah. He was with Naomi Campbell for about 8 years.
Was he?
Oh, sorry, did that like cultural zeitgeist just pass you by? They went everywhere with her.
Didn't know that.
Oh, right, okay.
He has
Oh.
a type, we'll just say, and it's kind of funny. 'Cause
We're all thinking it, Joe, but you went there. That's
And
Yeah.
the YouTube algorithm has just woken up and gone, I'm sure I need to listen to this further.
well, all I'll say is, like, if you watch Jackie Brown, where he hires that stripper, you know, I mean, it kind of references in a way. We'll just leave it at that. You know,
Okay, yes. Let's move on. Next.
Sandra Bernhard.
there's about Sandra Bernhard could get in any way politically controversial, is there? So
She had a relationship with Madonna, didn't she?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only thing I know her for.
No, it's
Oh,
fun 'cause- Go ahead. Sorry.
I was
Troy.
going to say, she's Minerva Mayflower in Hudson Hawk. Hudson Hawk, I might be the only person on the planet that thinks that's a really entertaining, quirky, great film. But she is amazing in that. She is so good.
She's really funny, and part of the reason why she was picked by Martin Scorsese is because she used to go on the David Letterman show, and she used to act like a stalker. I mean, she was basically pushing her stand-up and all that, but she would try to, she would rub his knee, and she would kiss him for a long time, and kind of joke that they were having sex together, even though they weren't. But what was funny though is she was hysterical. Like, she always made him feel uncomfortable, and she was on there, I think, 25 times on his show. And those are the best parts of the David Letterman show, is whenever she's on there. So at one point, like, she would always say, she's like, oh, I was hanging out with Versace, and no one would like believe her, or David Letterman would never believe her. He's like, she's just making up this crap. But she was actually hanging out with a lot of famous reclusive people. And one of them was Madonna. And, he was all like, well, you're full of crap and all that. And then the Daily News got a picture of her and Madonna. And at this point, this was Madonna at her height. She was like a god in the United States, because she had just done, I guess, Like a Virgin right after that, right around that time. And so she just was so damn popular. Like, she refused to go on the Tonight Show. She wouldn't do any talk shows or anything like that. There was a lot of paparazzi around trying to just get pictures of her in clubs, and it was hard to do. But she was hanging out with Sandra Bernhard. And so Sandra Bernhard came on the show, and he says, so you weren't kidding about being friends with Madonna? She's like, no, I don't kid. It's like, yeah, no, we're tight. And like, she would say something stupid, like we were watching Gilligan's Island the other night, and they probably were. And so he says, what are the odds of her coming on my show? And he goes, well, I guess I can ask her. It's like, she's backstage. And he's like, could she come on now? And she goes, yeah, I'll get her to come out. And she went in the green room, and she just grabbed her. It's like, come on. And she got her on Letterman's show. And you could just tell he is just in awe. He doesn't know what to say to Madonna. Because, like, again, it was just so bizarre. Like, she was on top of Michael Jackson. She was so popular at this point over in the United States. And it's just amazing. But the only one that's as cool as a cucumber is Sandra Bernhard. Madonna's nervous. David Letterman's nervous. And it's a, I'll try to send you the video if I can find it.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really good. But she was fooling around apparently with her and Sean Penn when they were married. She had a nice looking body.
Yeah.
All
Sorry.
that said, though, Joe, I do think one of my criticisms of this film would be the fact that there are 4 main cast members, and we've I, in particular, have put De Niro up on a pedestal. And then you've got Jerry Lewis, and this was a departure. So yeah, perhaps his signature performance was The Nutty Professor, but this was his only other big film. If you discount the Dean Martin stuff in the early days. Sandra Bernhardt and Diane Abbott never really did a film of this stature or quality ever again, and I do wonder how wise the casting choices were in this film. To be honest, so De Niro, standout legend, of course, but the others, to what extent did they contribute to the film, and to what extent could there have been better casting, perhaps?
Wow, Sandra Bernhardt is my favorite thing about this film.
Yeah, I thought she deserved Best Supporting Actress. I don't think she was even nominated, but
yeah,
like Amanda was saying, and I had said that now people look at this as one of his best movies, and especially after Joker came out, and you would hear people say it's like, oh well, it's like King of Comedy, and it's like, what's King of Comedy? And then people would watch it, and it's like, oh, De Niro's in it too, because he was in Joker, and it's like, yeah, they ripped off King of Comedy, didn't they? And I guess Todd Phillips, who was the director, really enjoyed that movie. Well, also, Martin Scorsese was originally tied to Joker, and then slowly he kept falling out. So I think he kind of was in Todd Phillips' ear, or was helping him. He might have been, a silent producer or whatever.
Right.
But it is like a Martin Scorsese film, Joker.
Yes, it is.
But Sandra Bernhardt, I think she's great. I think she's great in this film. And she's a great stand-up comedian. I did want to say one thing. So what happened with her, with Madonna, is that she introduced her to Rosie O'Donnell, because Rosie O'Donnell wanted to meet Madonna, and then they started having an affair, and then they kind of kicked her to the curb. That was it for Sandra Bernhardt. And I always used to hate Rosie O'Donnell for that. I was like, you got some hell of a nerve. Your friend introduces you to Madonna, and then you start have an affair with her, and they're like, you're not allowed in our club anymore. I just don't think that's right.
I just wondered if now was the time to segue into the Joker, I should say.
Yeah, I think so. I think we finished with roll.
Okay.
Well, we've been talking for roll call for about 45 minutes, so yeah,
Sorry.
probably. No, but I think we needed to. I think it was justified in that sense. But yeah, let's talk about Joker.
Now, I did want to watch Joker before coming and doing the podcast, but I just haven't had the chance, and I couldn't find it to view without having to pay for it. So,
well, I think you hear a range of views here, because I've heard that Joe's a big fan, but I'll be honest, I was bored by the Joker. That's
were you?
I was, yeah.
Wow.
I was intrigued, equally as intrigued as this film.
I don't mean it had no redeeming features, but yeah, I didn't enjoy it. So Joe, go on. What are the links between this film and King of Comedy?
Well, I will just say for Joker, I thought it was an incredible performance by Joaquin Phoenix, and he rightly deserved Best Actor that year.
Yeah.
But it's basically the link of it is that they're both delusional, and they both want to become comedians. They both think that they're funny. They both live with their mother. And they both snap at one point. And they both end up on like a sort of Tonight Show type of show, which brings them fame, even, after they had gone on there. I guess it's not elegantly stated, but that's kind of like the similarities that I see.
But I think it's a really good summary, but they're more explicit than that, aren't they? I think the Joker is heavily influenced by King of Comedy. If King of Comedy didn't exist, the Joker would be a different film, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, do we look at it as like a flip, as like a role reversal, as Robert De Niro now playing the talk show host that he wants to get in with? Because the one thing that I thought, if you were talking about the parallels with it, I found the kidnapping of Jerry Langford not believable. That the FBI would follow him around everywhere and would go, right, okay, and he was savvy enough to go, well, I'm not just waiting for my bit to be filmed, I'm waiting to be aired, so because you could cut it out if I tell you where he is now. The FBI just looked totally inept in this whatsoever. But I guess, I mean, I would give Joker a 9 out of 10. I know you did, Joe, as we said on your podcast, but yeah, it's you. Who was it that called this film a bit unsettling? I think it was you, Dom, at the start. It was just a bit, was it you, Amanda, that said you didn't really know where it was coming from? Well, if King of Comedy is dark, then I don't know what that makes Joker, because it takes it up to the whole new level, especially where he actually gets on the show and then has his chance.
Two things I'd say to that, Charlie, and with all due respect to Joe, because obviously this is the whole point of the pod, is different opinions and different experiences, but I much preferred King of Comedy to Joker, and I would put De Niro's performance well ahead of Joaquin Phoenix's, personally. I did think that King of Comedy is a difficult film to orientate yourself around. So the way it starts, and it's the opening scenes are filmed as if it's the talk show, and you're not quite sure, is this part of the film, isn't it? Is he going to cut, how's all this going to fit in? So one of my criticisms of the film, perhaps, is that it's probably not funny enough to be a really effective black comedy, and it's not dark enough to be a thriller or a horror in its own right. It's not Cape Fear at that kind of end of things, and it's so for me, it didn't sit naturally anywhere on the kind of spectrum of films, but it doesn't mean it's bad for that. But it was just consuming it, watching it. It was difficult to kind of place yourself in that. And I think as time passes, I think Amanda's point at the start was right. Actually, for me, it feels really prescient about modern culture and celebrity culture, and that's definitely a takeaway, which I think is more profound now, perhaps, than it was back in 1982.
Do we look at both? Do we look at both endings? And I know one of the things that you're going to talk about, Joe, because we had a chat yesterday. Are they real? Are the endings of both of these films, are they real?
That's the whole point. It's up to the viewer to decide whether they're a figment of the imagination or whether they're actually real or not. So in this film, it's the kind of ending is that he gets sentenced to 6 years, serves 2 years, 9 months. Supposedly he's created his memoirs, he's sold them for $1 million, and the books produced, King for a Night, and then a motion picture is going to be made, and then it cuts to him having his own show, and it but the introduction of Rupert Pupkin, it was a hard name to remember, isn't it? I think that's on purpose.
It's Rupert Pupkin.
Yeah. It keeps talking, keeps being introduced at the time, and you just kind of think, is that actually real or is that not real? And I don't know. And it's exactly the same with Joker as well. I think you're left to make your own decision as to whether the whole kind of what happened after he was sentenced is actually real or not, or whether it's a figment of his imagination.
I think that's a brilliant point. I think this film, in contrast to many others, different sorts of films that we'll do on this pod through this season, that's why it's a good film, because it challenges the audience in that way and lets you make your own mind up, perhaps. And I haven't watched it multiple times in the same way Joe has. I've seen it twice, but yeah, perhaps these are the subtleties that you pick up on more and more the more you immerse yourself in it.
It was for me. It was actually quite interesting. Some of the quotes in there. A guy can get anything as long as he pays the price. And that's when Rupert takes Rita out for the meal, when he's talking about all the autographs that he's got and how he's bigged himself up to say, well, I actually know Jerry, and I'm going to go to his house, and all this stuff. And you just think, actually, that's quite poignant. A guy can get anything as long as he pays the price. It's quite an interesting thought.
Yeah.
And then the other one, at the end of the movie, is better to be a king for a night than a schmuck for a lifetime.
That's a good quote.
So he's willing to go to extremes to get this opportunity on air as the king of comedy, because that's how he portrays himself, and that's how he wants to be known and revered. So he'll go to any lengths in order to do that. So he's not seen as a schmuck for a lifetime. And the comedic sort of monologue he does for the 15 minutes in the show.
This is the bit I wanted to hear your thoughts on, or everybody's thoughts on, because
I've got thoughts on this. Yeah.
When it's first introduced, he finally gets on stage. It's cut off after his introductory line, isn't it? And then you think, wow, that's a really brave directorial decision. You're building up to this crescendo, and then he actually walks away, and then you see it later when he goes to the bar and shows up on the television, and you see it.
So he shows Rita, doesn't he? He gets up on the bar, and the FBI's with him, and he's like, "I just need to do this, So he flicks the channel over to the channel that the show's being aired on.
But what I thought was really
live,
interesting about that is it starts off and he actually does well. You think he's going to be a car crash from the start, and there's some one-liners in a way that feels appropriate and fitting for what he's doing, and then he gets into a darker space, and he's talking about vomiting and his treatment at the hands of his mother and his father, but the studio audience is still laughing, which I guess plays into that whole discussion about, is it real or imagined? Were the audience reacting like that, or was it canned laughter? I don't think there is a right or a wrong answer.
Well, I think
I watched it twice. I've got to say, sorry, could I interrupt there? I watched it twice at the ending, and there's part of me that goes, we know that this guy thinks he's funny in his own head, so we are not going to get a view. My view is he went on the show and bombed. He didn't get that reaction at all. That wasn't the reaction that was happening. He imagined that in his head, and he made him go more and more bolder with some of the directions and everything that he took. And what you're expected, what was still in his head at the end, was that he did go to jail. That was real, but then he came out and all this other stuff and the accolades and everything else from that. And I thought the lesson to take away was, it wasn't, people didn't want to see him because of he was funny. People want to see him because he's now notorious, that he's interesting. We didn't like what he did, but my God, look at all the efforts and everything you went to in order to get to that. I mean, that's a great story. It's the same reason why people tune in for the OJ chase. They just want to see something. They want to be part of something. They're notorious. Look, this guy got on the Jerry Langford show by kidnapping Jerry Langford and having Tony Randall as the stand-in. And I'm like, yeah, I'm intrigued at that. And then I'd listen to him and go, well, it's not that good. Well, so I think the whole thing was made up in his head. I think.
I don't know if you recall, like there was a terrorist attack at the Boston Marathon where they had planted a bomb, like two brothers.
Yes,
and
remember that.
They killed one of them, and then one of them survived.
Found one in a boat, didn't they?
Yeah. But he got this fandom, like where all these girls were in love with him. They put him on the cover of Rolling Stone. They made him look like a superstar. And, all these girls wanted to marry him and said he can't be guilty because he's too good looking. So that does exist in reality, which is sad, is that people will become attracted to someone just because they're famous. They can be evil, they can be bad, but as long as they're on TV, they're famous. But I think that the audience did laugh at his jokes because he was built up as the king of comedy. They kept saying, this is a special show. This is a special night. Tony Randall said, this man is destined for greatness, and also you have to remember too, there's an applause sign out there for the audiences that is pushed because they know they're going to be on TV. They want to hear their laughter. They want to hear, because they want to watch it later and say, well, that was me laughing. Like I'll watch Bill Maher and it annoys the hell out of me because he has a live audience, and you can tell, like he'll say, it's like, oh, did you see, what Prince Harry did today? And someone will just go, woo, just because they want to hear that when it's being rebroadcast, and they'll tell their friends, that was me. I was the one who said woo, And I think that that's the case in this, is that the audience is being told you need to laugh and you need to laugh hard. Another thing is, what is that stupid show I can't stand about the nerds?
Big Bang Theory.
Yeah, Big Bang Theory. I can't watch that show and I read a whole thing on that where they would have audiences come in and say, you have to laugh. They would rehearse the audiences laughing.
Oh, God.
And then if they made a mistake, they would say, all right, we're going to do the scene again. I need you to laugh harder this time. And it's all fake because like a sign would come on and say laugh really hard, applause. And it's like you could just tell, because those, like, how Larry David is funny, he's got no laugh track or anything like that. Big Bang is not funny. If they didn't have like a laugh track or a live audience on there, telling you when it's time to laugh, it just annoys the hell out of me. But anyway, I do think that they were laughing, and that he did bring, she did get to see what it was like with him on that, like, Tonight Show or Jerry Langford show. But as far as the ending goes, I've watched this ending multiple times, and in the beginning I thought, yeah, he did make it. It's like, again, because he's famous now for doing what he did to Jerry Langford. People are curious about him, and this would have pissed Jerry Langford, knowing that he became successful by kidnapping him.
Mhm.
And someone would take advantage of that, knowing, well, we're going to get ratings, we're going to make a lot of money from this guy, he's going to make millions of dollars writing a book. But now when I watch it, I think that's all bunk. I think that's in his head, because there's no way they would let him out early, for good behavior, for kidnapping someone and threatening to kill him, and then taking, the Jerry Langford show hostage. I don't think they would do that. I think they would give him a more severe sentence back then. Also, it was pointed out to me that when you look at him when he's on the stage and the announcer is announcing it, like at the end, the curtains start to change into like jail bars, prison bars. It kind of looks like he might
I
be
missed that.
in prison. But what I felt this last time for the first time is I think he's in hell, because he's wearing a red outfit, and he normally doesn't wear that type of outfit. And he's just frozen. He's like a deer in the headlights. He's not saying anything.
Yeah.
He's not smiling. It's like he finally got what he wanted, and he realized that that's not what I want, and throughout this whole movie, he is never in denial. He's overconfident. And like, what I love about the character is that he makes everyone uncomfortable. The only one he doesn't make uncomfortable is Marcia, because she's crazy too. And I love his hand gestures, like especially when he says the jokes, like his hands go all over the place. Because I knew people like that too. I knew a lot of Italian people like that, where they would just grab you and like they practically pull you towards them. And I was like, you get off of me. It's like, I know you're trying to talk to me. Because one guy used to just drive me crazy. He'd always be touching me. It's like, why you gotta touch me? Can't you tell me a story without touching me? Crying out loud. But that's how people act. But I love his hand gestures. If you watch the movie, when he's trying to make a point, he just like is always using his hands in this movie. I think it's great. It's fantastic.
Well, I read that he went to a lot of stand-up, sort of startup stand-up shows, to do research on stand-up comedians to see how they kind of constructed stuff and delivered it as well. Just so part of his method acting, I suppose. Just to kind of understand how to deliver it for real.
It's amazing he's still alive, De Niro, like with all the crap that he's done. Because like with his method acting, I remember like he ballooned to be Jake LaMotta and Al Capone in The Untouchables, and then he immediately got in a terrific shape for Cape Fear. And
excellent.
Well, it's a bit like what's his face from Psycho.
Christian Bale.
Yeah, Christian Bale. He does that too, doesn't he?
Yeah, it's dangerous. I mean, but that's how much his acting is important to him. But like what Dom was saying, I honestly do think that he's probably the greatest actor of our generation. Wow. When you look at the list of his movies, and I love watching the majority of his older stuff, but like Charlie was saying, like some of the recent stuff, it's like kind of cringy. He plays a little safe now. He's going to be in that new movie with Scorsese.
Yes, it's a new one, isn't it? Is it Killing of the Flowers or something?
Yeah. And I don't like that now his new De Niro is Leonardo DiCaprio, because he puts him in every movie now, Scorsese. And he's good in a couple of them, but I wish he would go with someone else. But I'm glad De Niro's at least in that movie.
I'm not a Leo fan, fortunately.
Yeah, me too. I'm not a Leo fan.
Unlike Dr. Evil. Leo!
That's true.
So, I mean, only because we are keeping the podcast a little bit shorter. Any other final thoughts on it? Or I do have some trivia, but feels a
Me?
bit odd putting trivia time in. Yeah, just anybody in general.
Yeah, okay. I think it's more relevant today. And sort of like I was sat in my bed after I'd watched it and kind of having to think about, because I'd obviously not seen the movie before, and how poignant I thought it was about the trappings of fame. And when you get there, you see Jerry Lewis as having a very lonely, disconnected
That's a good
life.
point.
It's very cold, it's very empty, and it's almost like he can't have a real life because he's trapped by his fame. He can't go out down the street without being recognized. He can't just pop in the shop. He can't just do this or that or the other. And when he returns home to his apartment, it's all very plush and very lovely, but he's on his own. There's nobody there. And you just think, is that really the price that you have to pay for fame? And he was saying, in his, well, was it actually reality or in Rupert's head? I can't remember at that point, but he was saying about the cold, sort of harsh reality of it all. And, you're constantly waiting for somebody not to have the confidence in you anymore. So you could literally be dropped, like a stone. And then that's the end. So it's that continual worry and cycle of kind of trying to perform to be better than what you were yesterday, to maintain that lifestyle, to maintain that popularity, and everything that goes with it. So you see it today in society where people who haven't actually got any talent whatsoever now have supposedly celebrity status just because they've been on a reality show or whatever. And you just think, well, is this what people aspire to? Do people want to be that famous, want to have all that influence, as such? And I think social media has really twisted people's perception of what is good and what is a job and what is talent, etc. So yeah, I think this is actually a really good film to watch, to although it was made in the 80s, to actually really understand fame and the trappings of it.
So what score would you give it? Because I think we'll use our time to finish up.
My score, I'm actually going to give it a 7 out of 10 because I actually really enjoyed it, having not seen it before. Yeah, I would probably want to see it again, and I want to watch Joker as well to see how it all interacts with each other.
Oh, cool.
It's amazing.
Okay. Dom?
Well, I thought that was a brilliant summary by Amanda, and she covered a lot of the ground that I thought that was really relevant to this film as well. So I guess in summary for me, there are two great things about this film. De Niro as an actor and New York in the early 1980s, both brilliantly evocative in this. But personally, I did find it impossible to escape the conclusion that this is more minor league De Niro and Scorsese compared to some of their epic, all-time great films that they've done. I personally found the scope less impressive, talking about celebrity culture and US talk shows, and I found it more televisual rather than cinematic, if I'm being philosophical. So I think I probably added a half point on as we've discussed it today, because actually, despite its flaws, I still think it's more important and more enjoyable than many other films from the era. But anyway, in summary, I'm going to agree with Amanda in a roundabout way and give it a 7 out of 10.
Oh,
wow. Okay. As it's your film, Jay, you'll go last. So I'll just I'll use a little bit of my time to point out some little bits of trivia. Meryl Streep turned down Sandra Bernhardt's role.
Oh.
Johnny Carson was offered the role of the Jerry Lewis character, but turned it down. The street scum that they refer to when Sandra Bernhard and Robert De Niro are having the argument in the street are actually Mick Jones, Paul Simonon, and Joe Strummer. So basically, it was the Clash. that were in the background, and that's the street scum that they were referring to.
Brilliant.
But Scorsese said he found this whole unsettling, and they didn't work together for 7 more years because he put it was so emotionally grueling. So that's why they didn't work together until Goodfellas. How true that is, I never get the trivia, because one of the other pieces of trivia was Jason Bateman says Rupert Pupkin is one of my all-time favorite performances. It's like, who cares what Jason Bateman thinks about Scorsese films? I mean, look, I like Jason Bateman.
I like Jason Bateman.
Well, yeah, but it's not like, when Dom said it's one of the greatest actors of our generation and stuff. John Cusack. Joking, everyone. It's Kevin Costner, of course. But I think the reason why we have this, the scores at the end, I think it's worked really well, because I've changed my score based on what I've heard. I was going to give it a 4. I'm now going to give it a 6. I now would go and watch it. I think based on, this is why I love this podcast. This is why I love you, all of you, is because something will come up and you'll go, I didn't think of it in that way, or maybe I do need to go and watch it again. Not in a, oh, well, Joe, I need to go and watch for the bars at the end now and just go back.
Oh, I'm going to go and do that.
Yeah, and I would. I'd probably be mildly curious. But I think as a whole, you convinced me. I still think I'm right. The character Robert De Niro plays is so annoying that I'm going to have to get through that. But yeah, I've changed. So yeah. So we've got 776. Joe, over to you.
One thing I wanted to do, I wanted to add some context towards the talk shows, because like you said, it's different over in the UK. Johnny Carson was huge. I used to watch Johnny Carson every night, and he was so huge, I didn't care what guest he had on. Like, usually I would just watch his monologue and turn it off when the guest came on. And he would make and break people. So I think Rodney Dangerfield, usually he'd have stand-up comedians come on and they would do their bit, and they usually would go, and that was it. But if he went like this, we wouldn't see it. But I guess the cameraman or the producer would see it. He would say, I want him sitting next to me because I really like this guy. He would make you. So I think he made Rodney Dangerfield's career when he went like this. He did the same thing with Jerry Seinfeld. Because Jerry Seinfeld just came out there, did a monologue, and then he would go like that. And then, the other ones, he would just say, it's like, oh, thanks, and just go on to the next bit. But he was so funny. I mean, I would tape all of his shows and watch them. And the same thing with Letterman, too. I would watch all of his shows. But they did have a rough life, because they had stalkers that they had to deal with. Letterman had this one woman constantly breaking into his house and saying that she was his wife. And she was put in jail, then let out, and then she went right back to his house and broke in again. So there was that did exist. So I guess that's kind of why I like the movie, because I did see it happen in real life, and it is very realistic in ways. For me, Robert De Niro's performance, I'm not going to agree with Jason Bateman. I don't think it's the best performance ever by any actor, but I think it's an incredible performance, because you'd have to watch. I guess that's what it is. Like I told you in the beginning, watch it over and over and over again. The more you watch it, the more you realize just how great of an actor De Niro is, because we're all used to him playing like this mafia guy, this tough guy, or a boxer and all that. But he's a nerd in this, and he's okay with it. He's comfortable. We're the problem, not appreciating him. He doesn't give a crap about what we think about him. All he knows is he's not going to change. He never changes his name. Everyone keeps mispronouncing his name to Rupert Pupkin, which is the stupidest name. If you want to be a star, I think John Wayne's name was Marion something. His first name was Marion. And he says, well, that's never going to work. I'm going to change my name. But Rupert Pupkin is so delusional that he thinks his name is perfect. And again, it's just I love the performance of the movie. I love all the actors in the movie, how they interact with him. And I think it's a great movie, and I give it a 9 out of 10.
Wow.
Ooh, 9.
That's not bad. You changed my 6, 2 7s and a 9.
That's a hot movie.
It's not like, when Amanda said Howard the Duck was above average. So I always
Yeah, it's no
remember.
Howard the Duck.
Oh, I would watch Howard the Duck. Yeah. You don't want to know how many times I've seen Howard the Duck still.
No, we don't.
Um,
You're on.
right. Okay. I'm reaching for the that. There's the Dial of Destiny. There's the Hat of Destiny as well. So
Can we call it the Sack of Destiny?
Oh no, let's not
no.
call it sack.
How would you not call it?
Changes
the-
it.
Charlie Sack.
Right. Just so for
He's going to empty his sack.
for you listen right for you
Having a
listening
rummage around.
listening
in
in
it.
audio, you won't be able to see this, but if you're on YouTube, it's totally fair. I haven't sellotaped anything into the corner. We're just going to take this one out. So the film that we'll be covering in 2 weeks' time is Risky Business.
Oh, that's mine.
It's yours, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Oh, this is nice, isn't it? Everyone's drawn out. It's just Dom might have all his choices down as the last four. It'll be like drumming his fingers, going, "I'm not being funny. I'm not accusing you of anything, but I think this is rigged."
Well, maybe we should do one of mine next. But no.
Well, we
it's
can't. The Hat of Destiny speaks.
Yeah, we've had the Sorting Hat in Harry Potter, and now we've got Charlie's sack on our screens. So, yeah, what?
The algorithm's just gone. Hello, sorry, I thought I was finished here.
Well, Risky Business it is.
It is.
Right, Risky Business.
Tom
Can I-
Cruise in his underpants.
Can I make a confession? I've
You
never
like
seen
Tom
it.
Cruise in his underpants. Oh, no.
You've
never-
never seen Risky Business.
I've never seen it.
Oh my
What?
lord.
Even
I've never
I've
seen it.
obviously seen Risky Business.
I've never seen it.
Mr. 80s has not seen Risky Business.
What? Wait a minute. That's not a seminal moment of the 80s.
It is.
Risky Business.
Yes.
Oh, the bit where he slides in his.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's classic.
And next, you'd be telling me, "Oh, The Goonies is a good film."
I like the Goonies.
Oh God, overrated.
Oh, don't. You'll get rid of listeners.
Look, we will cover the Goonies. We may even do it as part of Lucky Dip. Who knows? Only I know. Who knows? But when we do, I despise the Goonies. I just don't like anything about it, apart from Robert Darby. That's it.
Wow.
Like, sorry,
What?
it doesn't. Truffle shuffles. Ugh. Nothing. Sorry, listeners. I mean, but I've got to be honest.
It's all right. We can edit this bit out before the pod goes live. So
Yeah, I'll make sure that I edit
our
that
new
out,
listeners.
definitely. Yeah, I'll make sure I edit it out.
Yeah, he's the editor
definitely.
though, so it'll
Yeah.
it'll be. Yeah.
I'll make it even worse. I'll put some rage music in there. I'll build,
Yeah, I can't-
build up.
I can't add any sad trombones there.
We wouldn't need to because I'm not alone.
Mm.
What was the Rotten Tomatoes score in this, by the way? Did anyone capture that?
Oh, it was a 90%, 90%.
Wow.
The critics liked it, the audience did, and I think it was only in theaters for 2 weeks.
2
When they
weeks.
pulled it.
Yeah, it was $2.9 million. I think it got,
19
and-
million to make.
and $19 million to make. Yeah.
Ouch. It was Entertainment Tonight's flop of the year, 83. Wow. Anyway, that's enough King of Comedy. I think we've covered that. I'm looking forward to seeing Risky Business then.
Mm.
Genuinely looking forward to it. I've heard it's deeper than just Boy Alone at Night because, it's got Rebecca De Mornay in, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'm in. I am in. 100% in.
And they do it on a train.
Oh, all right. I might start it tonight. Anyway, right. Well, great podcast. Love it. I am loving this Lucky Dip. If you want to find us, if you're listening on audio and want to go on YouTube, just type in Rusty Jump Podcast. Please subscribe and like. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and like. Then there you go. I think we're going to retire the webpage soon because I don't think it's doing anything. I look at other people doing podcasts and they're having a really good time doing it. But upkeeping a web page at the same time, I think I'm just going to bin the web page. If you want to contact us through Facebook, Facebook Messenger. Just type in Rusty Junk and get us through there.
The MySpace stats are looking pretty bad as well, Charlie. So,
Oh no!
I know.
That's
Just telling
Tom-
it like it is.
Is that Tom from MySpace told you that? Tom, everybody's first follower. Anyway, MySpace, good lord. But anyway, Friends Reunited, for those in the UK, I mean, that's where it all started. Social media all started there. And a lot of broken marriages later. Anyway, right, well, I'm going to say goodbye, and over to you. I'm going to say goodbye. I don't know about you.
All
three.
right, see you.
I mean, yeah.
Tom.
Bye, listeners.
Toodle pip.
Bye.